Cool.
Wait, did y'all use almost the same template?
The same template, yeah, because Eleventy folks are really aligned. And I realized that we choose the same,
Funny.
the same template. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
It's like showing up wearing the same dress to a party.
Yeah.
But better.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. So hello, I am Estela. I am web performance specialist at Schneider Electric. And apart from that, I'm also a co-host, co-organizer of the Barcelona Web Performance Meetup. We're also always looking for speakers. So if you are planning to come to Barcelona, sunny and hot Barcelona, please let me know so we can arrange something. Apart from that, I'm also a Google developer expert in web technologies, and I'm also a Storyblok ambassador. So as you can imagine, it's really correlated, right? Like web performance, Eleventy, in this case, Storyblok as well. And that's why I'm talking today about how to create your blog site using these two technologies, Eleventy and Storyblok. So in this case, why Eleventy? I think it's quite obvious for the audience today. So we are really aligned on that, all the benefits and all the good things that Eleventy brings to us. And why Storyblok? So to answer that first, what's a Storyblok? Storyblok is a headless CMS, so that allows you to decouple the front end from the back end. And cool things about Storyblok is that they host everything, so you don't need to worry about self-hosting your stuff. I know there are many options in the market. This is one option that I feel really comfortable with. I love the UI that they have, and depending on the technology that you use, you can also benefit from their visual editor, which is cool, but sadly with Eleventy is quite complicated to use. I'm working on that to write an article to describe how to enable that, but by default, and today we will see how to create a blog with a Storyblok and an Eleventy without this visual editor. So first, what do you need? You need, to use that, to put some context here. I was mentioning, depending on the technology that you use, it's because Storyblok has SDK packages that you can use depending on the technology that you use. They have a specific SDK for Next, Nuxt, React, and all these technologies that you have here, not for Eleventy. So they are different ways to get this information from this headless CMS and integrate that into your Eleventy project. They have a JavaScript SDK. I tried it. It was kind of hard for me to use it. You can investigate that if you want. So I prefer to do that, let's say, the old way. So I just use the API and fetch the data and create the collections for the data. So I prepared a lot of slides showing you the process to do that, but then I realized that maybe it's better just to share my screen and show you how to do that. I was quite optimistic, thinking like, okay, in 25 minutes or so, I will be able to show everything. To be honest, and to show you step by step how to do that, probably I need 1 hour and a half. But the good news is that I created a repository template that you can use. So it will be easier for you to follow this explanation, and then you can deeper investigate the code and adapt it to your specific needs. So what do you need to follow this tutorial? On a Storyblok account, you can use this cool link that I have to let Storyblok knows that I'm sharing this with you folks. And once you have an account, you are able to start following this. So let's go directly to show you how to do that. Let's go here. Once you log in Storyblok, you will see that you have your spaces here. I have several spaces here. So now let's create a new space. You have different options depending on the needs of your project. They have a free tier for small projects, personal projects, freelance projects, and depending on the project, if you are working on something more complex with more team members and so on, there are other paid plans. For this session, I will use this free option. Let's put here a name for our project, Eleventy Meetup demo, and you can select the location where you want to store the data. So depending on where your data will be consumed for, you can select different options here. It's cool that they are adding more locations, because until a few months ago, we only had Europe and United States. Now they have more options, so they are adding more locations depending on the needs of the users, right? So in my case, I will use Europe. I will create space. By default, you will fall here in this landing, get started to have different information here. We don't need this for our case. And by default, when you create a Storyblok space, they add some boilerplate stuff. We don't need that, so we can remove. Okay, just one step back. How Storyblok organizes the information. Okay, you have here the content. Here you have what they call stories. Stories are pages, actual pages. Okay, you can organize them by folders or directly storing here the stories, the pages. And every story that you publish, that you create, is composed by different blocks, components, like stories and blocks, Storyblok, right? And then the blocks that you have, that you will be consuming from the different pages that you will create, they are stored here in the block library. By default, they put this boilerplate information, this boilerplate templates that you can use. In this case, we will remove everything except the page because it's like the basic content type. We can't remove that. Okay. And now we will be creating the components for a basic blog site that I want to create, because what I try to create is something that it's described in my blog. I have a specific article explaining how to do that step by step. But I want to have this. I want to have a basic homepage in a blog site with an article section with the articles, the categories, and the author. So that's the architecture that I want to achieve. So in this case, I'm gonna create the blocks that I will need for every type of content. Let's start with the category, which will be a content type block. And here you can define the fields that this block will have. In this case, I will be very original and I will only have the category itself. It's a text field. That's it. Cool. Now then let's create the author. Block, it's also a content type block because we won't be including that. I will try to keep it simple, okay? So then here we have the author block. We will have the name, which will be text. I want to also put here the bio of the author. In this case, for example, we will use a text area to have an easier field to complete from the UI. And I want to add an avatar. In this case, I want an image, right? So in this case, it's an asset. You can add that. And here you can specify if you want to restrict that to one specific file type. I want just an image here. So I have the structure of the content that my author page will have. And with this information, let's start the folders for our content. Let's create the categories. Okay, I want to restrict the categories folder to content that is category. And as I was mentioning, the visual editor for this project with Eleventy, it's quite complicated to set it up. So let's just disable the visual editor to make it easier to fill the form, the form file, the form when creating the content. Okay, we have the categories. We can create a category if you want right now. Let's create a story. Category 1, for example. Okay, let's create it. And we have here the field. I will call it category 1. We can save it, then it will be in draft, or we can directly publish it. Okay, then let's move on to the authors because we already have also the author. Again, this will be restricted to author content. And we can create here. Author 1. And, oh, I didn't disable the visual editor, the check that you saw. That's why it's a bit annoying if we don't have the visual editor because we will have the by default visual editor here. So just remove that. So it's easier for us to just focus on the content that we want to include here. Author 1, this is author 1. And here we can upload the files. If you already have files in your project, they will be displayed here. I have here a cool author picture to use in this project. So let's select it. Okay, cool. We have our author information here. Let's publish it. And now that we have this, we need the articles, right? So let's go back to the block library and let's create our article block. It's a content type block. And then what we will have here, we will have the title of the article. It will be a text field. Then we will have I called it publication date. You can select here the date time type of field. Then I want to select the author, right? So in this case, I just want to select an author. So it's a single option, and we can configure it here, making sure that the source are stories, and the author will be in the authors folder that we created before. And we just want to make sure that here we only have author content. Okay, we have this. Same with category. We will select the category. Then it's also a single category here. Let's make sure here we select the stories that are under the, I'm with categories right now, and then the category save. Okay, author category, and then we need the body of the article, right? Here I will select Markdown, but in order to make it easier to work, let's select the rich text as default. Here we will have in the UI the rich text options, which is easier to manage. Okay, so here we have, let me double check that I'm not forgetting anything. Yeah, correct. Okay, cool. We have our article block, and now we also need the home page will be page. In this case, in this example, I will use this to for the home page. Okay, so in this case, I will create like new fields. My home page, I'm planning to have like a heading with something big that I will display in the screen, and then a subtitle. It's also text. And in this case, I'd like to highlight like the most important articles that I want to show in my homepage. So it will be, I call it highlights. And in this case, it will be multi-options because I want to cherry pick different articles. And here we can also modify that. Let's make sure that we select stories and they are under the articles folder. It's not created yet. We will create it right now, but anyway, we can set it up here. And the content will be article. Cool. We already have our page modified. We can go back to the content, and then we can create the folder for the articles. Restrict to article content, and disable the visual editor. Okay, and then we can create here our first article, our first story. I'll create an article 1. Okay. Let's create some content here, the publication date right now. And then we can select the author, the category. We only have one. If you have more, then in the dropdown, you will have all the options. And this is my first article. Cool. And we can use, here. We can use this rich text stuff here. Okay, we have this article published as well. Let's go then with the homepage. Our homepage, in this case, I don't want to use that. Let me create it from scratch. Just the story, the home, the content page. Okay. Yeah, let's just modify that to use the form only visualization. And then this is my blog. And this is a cool subtitle. And here I only have one article, so let's highlight that. Okay, cool. We have like basic content already published. You maybe think that we are okay to go live, but I have a technical SEO background and I always worry about SEO. And when we create, at least when I create a blog, I want to make sure that it will be indexable by search engines, or that if I share an article somewhere in social media, it will be shown cool, you know, with the proper title, description, and an image and so on. So that's why I want to add some metadata here. And you have different ways to do that. I mean, Storyblok has a plugin that you can, an SEO plugin that you can buy. It's a paid one. And then you can configure it directly here from the story. But if you don't want to pay for it, you can create your own blog. And that's what I did. So in this case, let's create a new blog. I call it SEO. Oh, in this case, it could be a nestable blog. And let's start adding here stuff. I want to be able to define a title. It's a text block, a text file, the meta description. I want to be able to modify the canonical. This is SEO stuff. If you are not familiar with that, don't worry. By default, it will be working well. And if your SEO folks want to modify this for SEO reasons, they will have the ability to do that. And then I want to also be able to decide if a page is non-indexable. So I will create a no-index toggle. And by default, it's disabled. That means that by default, the page will be indexable. Okay, and also for sharing on social media, I want to be able to adapt the title and the description and the image that is shown on social media. So let's create the OG title, OG description, and OG image. In this case, the image is an asset. So remember, it's an asset, and we can here restrict the kind of asset that you can select. Cool, we have our blog, but now the idea is to have this blog as part of the rest of the blogs, right? So we can go to the article and add here our SEO blog. And here we need to configure what kind of blog we want to put here. I just want one SEO blog, and I only want a specific blog, which is our SEO one. We can repeat the same with the rest of the blogs. Here, one, our SEO one. Oops, here. Cool, our category. Here. Our SEO blog, we are almost there. And our homepage, our SEO component here, just one, please. And just the SEO one. Cool. I know that it's a bit tedious, let's say, but yeah, it's never easy, right? So in this case, now we need to add this component here. You can see here, it's the SEO component. For just time reasons, I will keep them just empty. I will just make sure that it's here empty because in the boilerplate template that I will be using later, this has by default content behind the scenes. So just let's make sure that the content is here, the component, sorry. Let's go to our article one. Yes, let's add our SEO blog, even if it's empty. Okay. Our author as well. You can see here all the details. And our category. Cool. Now we have all the basic content that we need to create our full blog. And then now it's time to create our Eleventy project, right? So to properly get all the information from Storyblok, as I mentioned, I was trying to use the JavaScript SDK. I was unable, so I decided to use their GraphQL API. You have all the documentation here if you want to deeper investigate about that. But as I will be showing you, I already created a repository template with all the information, because I was showing you here that I created a lot of stuff here with all the screenshots, with all the process. And then also, if we scroll down, we start seeing the structure of the Eleventy project that we want to achieve, right? So here, if you want to go step by step, you can check out the article directly. Long story short is that I created a repository template, so you can directly use it. Let's create a new repository. Okay, I'll keep it private by now. And once we have everything configured, I can give you more information about that. Okay, so now let's clone this locally. Okay, let's install the dependencies by now. And you can see here that it says, okay, clone it, install it. And then what you need is to create an end file after following all the Storyblok space stuff that I've shown you before. Now we only need to create an end file in this, where is it here? In this repository. So let's create our end file. And you can see here that we have three things here. The API key, for sure, to get the data, to fetch the data. The domain, this is because of the canonical stuff. The canonical tag is an SEO tag that allows search engines to understand if the page should not be indexed because the original one, the canonical one, is a different one, and this tag must use a full URL. It doesn't allow you to use relative paths. That's why we need here to put something. But for this test, we can just put here our local host, and then the API key. I show you here in the Storyblok space. Here in settings, you have the access tokens, and you have by default a preview token. This preview token allows you to fetch data that is published or is draft, depending on variables that you can put in the configuration, okay? If you want just to use a public one, which is only for consume with this kind of, when you publish that, for example, on Netlify or any other path that you want to use, right? You can use just a public one to get just the published data. For this example, I will use the preview token that I already have here. So let's put it here. And the home ID. What's the home ID? Because we are fetching the data of all the articles, all the categories, all the authors, right? But the homepage is one single page, so it has a specific ID. So in this case, to get this specific ID, you can use the GraphQL Explorer that Storyblok provides. You only need to put here, the token, and you will have here the Explorer with all the information that you have in your project. In this case, the homepage is a page item. We don't know the ID yet, but if we go to the page items here and we check all the items, by default, it will give us the ID. This is the ID that we need to put here in our variable. Okay, and now it's a critical moment where it can work or not, depending on if I did it right? Let's start serving this. Yeah, it worked. And you can see it here. It's the boilerplate that I create with some basic CSS. Sorry, I'm not a designer. I'm not a good front-end developer, so my skills are limited. But you can see here that you have the homepage with a link. You have here the structure of the homepage that we created, the heading, the subtitle, and the highlighted articles. Then you have here direct access to the articles, the authors, and the categories, and everything is well linked, right? In the category, you will have all the listed articles, And here you have the article. It's working fine, the markdown stuff, to ensure that we have the proper styles applied here. And our author with the image. So cool. It has room for improvement, but it's a basic template that you can use for your blog project if you want to use that. So let's look at the code now that it works and you can see the outcome, right? So here we are using, here the Storyblok.js. I created a function to fetch the GraphQL API. We need the API key. And this is what I mentioned about the published or draft content. By default, it will, if you don't have anything here, it will get the published content. But you can add also in your env variables, if you want to put it draft, then you will get the draft data. So if you are modifying something here because you want to see how a new article will look like before going live, right? So you can modify your stuff here in your article. Let's try it. Let's save it, but not publish it. Then we can go here. And if we go here with a version, version draft. And then something bad here is that we need to rebuild the project every time that we want to fetch something new. It's not, because again, it's not an official SDK that allows you with tons of JavaScript to have this reload on the fly. We are fetching the data at build time. So that's why it's not working that way. So we need to stop that, start the project again. And we should be able to see here the draft version. You can see it's not published yet, but we are fetching the data from the draft versions of the project. So you can see how it looks like before going live. Cool, we've seen this, right? This function, and we are using this function to get all the articles. This is the GraphQL, the query to get information. If you want to investigate the fields that you have and how you should structure that, again, you should go to the GraphQL Explorer that they have, and you can navigate through all the available information here. So for example, if we want to check the author, we have this content, the avatar, the bio, the name, the SEO, and then they have other technical stuff that they do behind the scenes. So you will be able to check here all the required information that you want to fetch from the API. So this is for articles, same for authors, same for categories, and same for homepage. And here is why we need the home ID to fetch the content for that specific page. Apart from that, more Eleventy stuff here. We have I'm using Nunjax because I feel comfortable with that. But yeah, you know, the cool thing of Eleventy is that you can use almost any template language that you want. So it looks like a bit dirty, I would say, because of this SEO stuff. But it's cool because you already have SEO stuff this way. So it's the side effect. So yeah, here you can check the page itself, the articles list, and so on for all these pages. I know that there's room for improvement. I'm not super proficient working on these kind of things, coding this, but I hope this can help you on your project if you're planning to create an Eleventy blog and with a Storyblok and you don't know how to start. What else I can explain? Yeah, here in the configuration, you can see that I'm using, if you don't use that, the markdown wasn't working well. You get the actual markdown in your article. So instead of here, the article, let me show you here. You have, the markdown itself. You don't have it in HTML. So you need to use the markdown IT I'm using here. And yeah, the different filters to get categories and authors. Okay, so different things here. Again, you can adapt it, adjust it to your needs and your projects and your ideas, but I hope this helps. And actually that was all that I had. Again, it's quite complex to go through all the code. We have this article explaining everything in detail. The screenshots are updated because Storyblok updated the UI. 2 days after I published this article. But anyway, the content is mainly the same. And that's it. I don't know if we have any questions or time for questions or.